So, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Scott Shea. I'm the founder and I'm the board president of Chai Mitzvah. Separately, I'm also the executive producer of the film Guns and Moses, which is going to be having its major theatrical release September 6th. And we might even talk a little bit about that too, as we talk about movies and Jewish movies. And I also, by the way, do some occasional reviews of movies. And one of them that I reviewed was Bad Shabbos, much to my enjoyment. Chai Mitzvah is a national organization, and we're now celebrating our 16th year. We're the sponsor of Scholars Circle and a Jewish resource center that focuses on building community through Jewish engagement programs. The Scholars Circle program was inspired by my latest book, Conspiracy U, a case study, which unpacks anti-Zionist conspiracy theories from the left and from the right on the political spectrum. Today's Scholars Circle, though, is in a bit of a lighter note. It's on challah and comedy, how movies shape cultural identity and public perception. This evening, should I say, I have the privilege and pleasure of interviewing our scholar and filmmaker, Daniel Robbins, a New York City-based filmmaker who's acclaimed for his versatility across genres. We'll be getting into some of that too. He directed the comedy Bad Shabbos, which premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival and won the coveted Audience Award. We encourage questions during this interview, and at the end, I'll be taking questions from those who are viewing. Please use the Zoom Q&A button on your screen. Welcome, Daniel. So, first of all, how is your summer going? Are you taking a break from movie making, or are you into a new project?
I don't know, we're working every day. Thank you, Scott. That was such a nice intro. And thank you to the whole team who put this together. Simon, especially, I spoke to the most, Audrey, and Scott for being here. And I assume we're going to be talking about Taylor Swift's engagement because that seems to be the most important topic right now.
Right. Well, that's why we actually scheduled it for tonight months ago.
Okay,
Yeah.
just making sure.
Um, so there's so much to talk about, and I really enjoyed. First of all, kol hakavod to you on making Bad Shabbos, and you know, in a certain kind of way, Bad Shabbos, you're like the only person in the universe who could probably actually create it, given your background and the various sort of streams of your development, being a day school kid, knowing what Upper West Side Shabbat Todah really like, knowing how important doormen are to people's lives in Manhattan in particular. But you also, you know, it could have done anything, and you have done a lot of different movies and documentaries. What inspired you, and what sort of motivated you to do bad shit? To not only do to write, direct, produce Bad Shabbos.
There were probably two factors. One was that I've loved comedy movies since I was a kid. Where I remember watching like the old Mel Brooks movies like Spaceballs with my grandfather, dad, and me as a kid, and we were all laughing. And then I remember loving like Mike Nichols' The Birdcage, all the Woody Allen films, and movies like Meet the Parents, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It was all these comedies that are my favorite movies to watch that just haven't been getting made. So the primary goal was to try to make something just in that vein. And then the next question is, well, what kind of movie are we going to do? And um, we thought, Scorsese says the most personal is the most creative. Like, that's what Bong Joon-ho quoted when he got his Oscar for Parasite. So he said, okay, well, what's personal to us? We're a bunch of modern Orthodox kids. And we feel like that hasn't been portrayed authentically or with the right love. Like it seems like whenever Judaism is portrayed in a piece of art, it's either treated as a light joke where it's in the background or it's Chassids doing crimes and there's nothing in between, which is people who take their faith seriously but engage with the secular world. And we thought, okay, if we can show an authentic Shabbat dinner and then mix it with this crazy story, that would be a movie I would want to watch. And if we get it right, it might relate for a bunch of other people. And the main accomplishment that I think the team is proud of is that, yes, it's playing for a Jewish community, but I thought because it's working for us, it'll work for others. But we made the movie in such a way that it's playing for people who have no affiliation. Like we've had audiences like fully non-Jewish who are like loving the film, loving the characters, and like asking about Shabbos and just connecting to these Jewish characters on screen, which I think is the way to, make people feel closer to you.
So you make an interesting point. There's a dearth of comedies. I mean, actually, a lot of the reporting on Naked Gun, which had a gazillion-dollar promotion budget and the like, and it was a big studio, big names in all of the lead roles, and there was tremendous argument over how difficult it is to make comedy today
Yeah.
uh, in a movie. And of course, comedians also discuss how hard it is in the political age that we live in. Did you confront any issues as you were making um, Bad Shabbos about, hey, I have to pull my punch here, or hey, I have to be a little DEI here?
Um, so I know that's the overall sentiment, but I take the opposite approach where like I think it's a better opportunity for comedy because I started out making videos in Ramaz for these school assemblies. And I always knew that if we watch the video with a rabbi in the room, it's going to be funnier. Because when you have rules of what's okay and you have restrictions, that's when you could push up against that in a clever way. Like that's when you can do something really funny. When everything's allowed, it's tough to, get that tension. So we kind of played with a lot of the tensions that are in the world right now. And I think pushing up against them in the right way is what's making this so funny for people. Like we deal with the stereotypes that people are lobbing about, oh, Jews control the media, Jews control the banks, and we don't shy away from it. Like we call it out and show people how ridiculous it is. And I think if, we were in an age when everything was allowed, then I don't think these things would, make people laugh as much.
So you really, I mean, nail it, and I think it's a testimony to the ensemble in terms of some of the nailing. But what I also thought was really interesting was you also nailed the Devar Torah
Nice.
at dinner. And I thought that, yeah, that was a reasonably good Devar Torah for, for really anyone. And did that is that something you wanted to do? Is that something, and it was also sort of pivotal in having people understand the motivations, but was that something you wanted to do to actually have a Bissell Torah in the movie?
Yeah, you can't sit down for a meal without a Dvar Torah, and you can't sit down for a movie without one. No, it was all for the story, and my parents finally think the yeshiva tuition was worth it because we got that right. But that Dvar Torah in particular actually came, if you watch the credits carefully, there's a special thanks credit for Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, who he's probably one of the biggest influences on my Judaism. I read almost everything he put out. And when we needed, you write the whole script and you get it like 80% of the way there, and the last 20% is seeing like what the story needs. So it wasn't in the first draft, but then we realized like we need a moment where the mom comes around to the daughter and we see the daughter-in-law and we see the daughter-in-law connecting to Judaism in a way that kind of converts the mother-in-law over. And we thought that would be such a beautiful way to do it with the Devar Torah during this tense moment. And the next question is, okay, well, what Devar Torah are we going to use? So we know the movie takes place in November, so we probably have to look at like late Breshit or late Genesis. So I looked at all the Rabbi Sacks Devar Torahs around that time, and this one was just perfect. Like it worked so thematically, and also the idea that there was Joseph and his brothers, and it's similar to what they're doing, covering up
Right.
this body. And the theme of it is what we were trying to say in the movie, which is this idea that anyone could be an angel who doesn't know they're an angel. It's just the smallest act of kindness or acceptance. Uh, and then we obviously made it a lot shorter than he had it because of attention spans. But thank you, Rabbi Sachs. His family hasn't seen the movie yet, but hopefully they do one day.
Well, I have to tell you a story. So Rabbi Sachs was a mentor to me, and I actually
Really?
posted some places, probably still on the Chaim Mitzvah website or on my personal website. I got to know him somewhat, and as I was writing my book, In Good Faith: Questioning Religion and Atheism, I actually consulted with him a number of times, and at the end, um, as I submitted it to the publisher for sort of edits and it was accepted under a tentative title, which was, I don't even want to repeat. It wasn't a great title. And I asked him, I gave him a list of 12 possible titles for the book. And he looked down at it. I remember this, in the way that Rabbi Sachs could do. He looks at it, he studies the piece of paper, he's studying the piece of paper, and then he puts it down, looks to the side, and then comes up with a title that's nowhere on the piece of paper. And he takes his hand and he goes, "In Good Faith." So what am there was nothing else to do but to give the book that title.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah, I always, there's so much. He was just such a personality. We really miss him today in this complicated world that we're in. We really miss him today. Um,
Yeah.
so, um, in terms of balancing, like there's humor, and then there's you know, how are you gonna, how are you going to have Jewish tradition? Plus, frankly, these people are sort of covering up an involuntary manslaughter. Um,
Yeah.
so, did you think about balancing all that, like who the good guys are um, and the like, or did that not really come up? I mean, that's what in my review, that was the first thing that occurred to me. As I told you, convincing the jury that the guy who's dead
Right. I love that
deserved
line.
is really critical. And you
Yeah,
did it, but did you think about how you wanted to balance that for the audience?
you're right. It's a really tough balance. And if you don't get the audience on board with it, then you're finished. And the main note we got on the script for all of our drafts was the guy who dies isn't bad enough. So we added all these extra lines of like him saying things like, just inappropriate and mean to make it obvious that he's bad.
Yeah,
But then I met with the actor and I was like, what do you think about these lines? He's like, I feel like we don't need them. Like, if I just act a certain way, like my energy, people will be okay with me dying. And we took out almost all of his mean lines, and he still says things that are slimy and wrong, and you're kind of okay with it. And just his performance was enough that people are okay with him dying. And then the second question is, how do the characters react to it? So in real life, if someone dies, like, people are gonna melt down, they're gonna mourn for like two scenes. But we took a lot of inspiration from Seinfeld. If anyone's watched, there's an episode where George's fiance dies from licking envelopes.
yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, and they don't really get that into it. And I'm thinking, like, if you're watching Seinfeld, you're not here to mourn, you're here to move on. And that was our approach to this movie, where it's kind of funny if the characters don't go that deep into it. So even scenes where people might mourn, we kind of cut away from it. So like when the sister sees that her boyfriend has died, we just cut away so we don't deal with what her reaction is. And then the only time we really show someone showing some pain is when Kira Cedric comes in and sees it and she starts freaking out as a normal person would. But at that point, so many people have seen it that it doesn't affect us in the same way. But
So I'm a little bit of a Seinfeld nerd, and at the finale, where they actually reprise where George's fiance dies from licking, and I think it was the doctor that testifies and said he had barely concealed joy, that,
yeah,
and and sort of that's what he did, like she's dead, I mean, it was a hilarious scene, but of course they got away with it, and you did too. At the end of them, by as you did it, people are rooting for the family to get away with it. I
yeah,
think I think I felt that way.
yeah, I'd say 99%.
You had a few that didn't.
Yeah, you have a couple, someone like could walk it up screening and say someone dying is never a joking matter. It's this very serious thing. And I'm like, you can't argue with that if someone's, but most people are used to watching a TV or a movie where someone dies and, you have fun around it.
So you've made movies. You've made you came from the horror genre where lots of people are dying, like and death, destruction, and despair, and gore is everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and making that transition as a writer director, how was that? And Are you do you prefer the horror genre to the comedy genre?
Yeah, so I've always preferred comedy because that's what I did growing up from a kid on. Like my grandfather, whenever he came over, he'd always want a new joke. So even when I was a kid, I'd always be reading joke books and trying to make him laugh. And then in high school, we were making comedy videos for all the school assemblies. And then college, I made a bunch of comedy shorts. But when I graduated, I got the advice that I should do horror because it's harder to start out in comedy. So me and my friends just made horror movies, but it was a really good training ground because we did take a lot of the lessons because storytelling lessons kind of transfer from different genres. So we took a lot of the lessons from horror and applied it when we were ready to make a comedy. So, for example, in horror movies, we had a rule that the realer it feels, the scarier it is. And I think with comedy, you have the same thing. The realer it feels, the funnier it is. So we had a big emphasis on authenticity that I think a lot of movies are missing now, where they just make the world a little too ridiculous. So then they don't have stakes or tension, and then it makes things less funny. So I think that's part of why the movie's working. And then there are even little principles like, making sure you start the movie as exciting as possible. I call this I guess Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy. I guess we can call it the Jeopardy rule. But if you watch Jeopardy, uh, it doesn't start by introducing the contestants. The first thing they do is they start the game, do a few questions, and then they say, okay, now let's meet the characters. And I think for a movie, that approach also helps, where you just start the story with a bang, and then, okay, here are the main characters. So it's little things like this that you just pick up through doing this through so many years of how to, engage an audience and make something effective. Because even if you have the best themes in the world or the best intentions, if the movie's not entertaining, nobody's gonna see your intentions or hear your Dvar Torah. So our whole team is really set on just making the most entertaining movie possible.
Well, it was a well-paced movie. I would have to say that. And the beginning it does grab your attention. I mean, that actually was something that with Guns N' Moses. I don't- I you haven't- I think probably nobody on this call has seen yet, but it
Oh,
starts with a September 6th. See it in theaters everywhere. Um, the
Lon Teitel saw he programmed Guns N' Moses and Bad Shabbos, he said. The
okay.
Greensboro Jewish. So some people have seen it here.
There you go. Okay. Um, the the beginning scene is very quickly um, the main. We've all been to these gala dinners where someone's honored for giving a lot of money, and then the first scene of Guns N' Moses is there's the gala dinner, there's a warm up, and then the awardee is assassinated right on the spot, and the movie becomes a whodunit and all of that. But it has to grab. That's so important to grab folks' attention and then bring them in. Because if you don't do that, you really don't get a second chance to make a good first impression in a movie.
Yeah,
It's really remarkable. Um,
it's true.
I want to ask you a little bit more about the inspiration for the movie because you've talked about, and I've heard you talk about non-Jewish movies, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I think you had mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, Shiva Baby.
Right.
Um, and you mentioned other sort of non-Jewish family, things that go wrong, sort of not weddings, but movies. When you were writing this, I mean, and I've heard this from a number of filmmakers that they watch certain movies, and they'll watch them three times to get into the mode. What were the movies that you watched and rewatched, if any, to make this movie?
For this movie, the main three were Bringing Up Baby, which is a 1940s Howard Hawks comedy. Oh no, actually, His Girl Friday. And the reason was that um, they talk so fast in that movie. And I know the way modern Orthodox households talk, because I'm in them all the time, is a very quick pace. And we wanted the actors to know that you can talk really quickly and it works. And that's a movie where people talk at a quick clip because people were so used to radio back then, they were used to faster dialogue. So in this movie, normally the rule is that for every page of screenplay, you have a minute of screen time. And our screenplay was 116 pages, which means the movie should have been 116 minutes, which is almost 2 hours, but the finished movie is 84 minutes because they just go through it so quickly. And then the other two movies were The Birdcage by Mike Nichols, just because it's such a similar tone, where it's two in-laws meeting for the first time and
Right.
things go wrong. And then this other comedy called Death at a Funeral, just because it's this British comedy that's very funny and it also surrounds a death and they handle it in a really funny way. And we have a couple similar sequences to that movie. But those three were the main ones, and then movies like Meet the Parents, just to get in that spirit. But it was probably those four.
Those four. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and I just there's one character I just have to talk about because I wrote this in the review. He really commits grand larceny on every scene that he's in, which is Method Man. How? Tell me about. I mean, I thought that was there was a couple pieces of inspired casting, um, and that was one of them. How did you get him? Did you think of him? Did he sort of appear out of casting, or um, because he nailed it?
Yeah, he's a genius. I wish I could take credit. It was the casting director's idea. And once they suggested, it, I was like, oh, obviously he's the best choice. But we didn't know who to ask because it was such a tough role because you need someone who pretty much has three things. You need someone who has an aura that when they walk into the room, the whole family shuts up, and that's hard. Uh, but he has that as like this hip hop star. And then two, you
Yeah,
need someone who just has like a warmth about them where they could say controversial things and you know it's coming from a place of love. And he has that where like anyone he talks to, like he's like looking in the eye, he knows your name, he's talking to you with love, and he just is a loving guy. And the third is we just needed an incredible actor with a genius sense of timing and pace. And he's like such a trained actor. Like he might win an Oscar one day. And he also is just such a funny guy.
yeah,
And the fact that, he has this hip hop background, he's so good at writing lyrics. So for improv, he would come up with so many ideas and he would, whenever he was on screen, like he would just crackle. And, when you're shooting, you do a take of, usually you film the script, then you give notes on the script and you film that. And then once you have it, you let people play around. And when you got to the playing around, he would always have these creative ideas that just elevated it and gave it a little extra electricity. So, you know, we're blessed that he was in it. And we got him just because we sent it to his agent. His agent liked it and then sent it to him. And he read it and thought it was funny. And he lives in New York City, so he figured he'd come and make the movie.
so the I mean, by the way, I thought when he started, I hope this is a spoiler, but when he starts talking about, the Jews, I mean, I thought he delivered those conspiracy theories like they were. I was ready to man the space laser. He was like, when's my watch? He was like he nailed it so well. It was actually I think I gasped.
That's great. And that's also shows like the fine line of comedy where we filmed a few takes of that where he says like, oh, Jews control the media. And like even though it's the same actor in the right setting with the right line, like there were takes of that weren't as funny. Like there was one where maybe he like leaned forward and was like a little like conspiratorial about it. He's like, we control the media. And like that's less funny. And then we tried one like, what if you lean back? And then the version where he leans back and he's like, because we control the media and like he's a part of it. Like that nuance just made it funny. So it shows like how hard getting the comedy out on set is because it's such a small bullseye. So you really need the best actors possible.
So you got a few really, the leads, some of the leads actually, Kira Sedgwick, David Paymer. Were those hard to get? Were they happy to do this? This is not they're not really typically in. Kira Sedgwick is, sort of a famous for the closer and,
Yeah,
probably
she's
has a
incredible.
pick of anything. Um, how did you get them?
Also, people should know Kira Sedgwick is Jewish in real life because her mom is Jewish, so it's 100%. And her dad is a WASP, so she's also 100% WASP. She's 200% of a person. That's why but it was the same process. We sent it to their agents. The agent liked it and then shared it with them. And we spent so long on the script, like maybe 45 drafts, that it was such a good document. Like anyone who picked it up just like ripped through it, like was laughing, loved the characters. It was like even minimal description, so you really didn't get bogged down. And I think the actors, they love doing this. So if you give them a movie that, affects them and warms their heart, and also a role that feels authentic and that they'd be excited about doing, like they'll show up. So that was really it. They were just excited to make the movie. I wish, I wish there's a better story, like I kidnapped someone, but
So in the making of the movie, it was a Shomer Shabbos movie.
oh
Um,
yeah, we had to.
and so tell us about that, making a Shomer Shabbat movie. Because I honestly thought Guns N' Moses was the only Shomer Shabbat movie, and then I learned it had already been filmed. Then I learned you did it.
Yeah, I also know like my previous movies were also because we would do Sunday to Thursday schedules. And you even get an advantage because filming on Sunday, you usually can like permit things in a different way and there's no traffic. So it opens up creative possibilities. But for this movie, because we were filming in an actual apartment building, we had to do Monday to Friday. So it was pretty much like, 7 to 7 every day. And then Friday we ended like right as the sun set. But I think it helped us a lot because, you know, one is for a comedy, you need the actors to be sharp. So some movies just have crazy schedules or going to night shoots, but then people are tired and the performances can't be as good. And then it also helped like orient the crew around, the reason we're making this is we're trying to show that there's like a beauty to faith, where it seems like a lot of movies that touch on faith, the goal of the characters is to get away from the faith and like self-actualize. But I think that's become a dangerous cliche where now you see a lot of people, I think like there's like a record of conversions to Christianity now because people are looking for community and meaning and faith or something to give themselves a framework to life that maybe adds a little more meaning. Uh, so we had the whole crew over for Shabbat dinner before the movie filmed. And as we were filming, we tried to, follow these rules and try to show, the not the beauty or the meaning that comes from just sanctifying this specific time. And I think it had an effect on people.
So you started. I was going to ask about that. You started before acting before. I mean the actual production with the real serious Shabbat meal.
Yeah, we had the whole crew over. I couldn't get the cast because they were busy, but the crew came, and even afterwards, we had this issue where the props department couldn't find certain props, like the right candlesticks or Havdalah candle set or a challah plate and a challah cover. And then the art director said, "Well, your mom had all this stuff. Like, why don't we just use what your parents had?" I was like, I guess. So we called her and I was like, "Hey, do you think we could borrow some stuff?" And she said, "Sure, just as long as I get it back." So almost every item in the movie is from my family's table. So that's why like things feel used and real. And it's part of the realer it feels, the funnier it is. So I think that all added to the authenticity. And then my mom asked the producer, "Am I getting paid for this?" And he said, "You'll be paid in nachas," which is Yiddish for like pride, which some would say is the highest currency for a Jewish mom.
You have a
She might have like
special
cash too. What's that?
special thanks section.
Oh, of course, she's all over special thanks. Right
Good,
with Rabbi Sachs. And
good.
if anyone wants to submit questions, you can click on the chat button
Yeah.
and type something in the chat and we can address it. And feel free to ask anything. It could be controversial. You could ask about me about the Middle East. It could really go anywhere.
So we are going to take some questions from the chat, but I wanted to ask you, speaking of the Middle East, did you get any? Um, so first of all, tell us about both the love and the hate that you got, um, if any, on the hate side.
Well, the main love was that we filmed before October 7th. And then afterwards, we said, okay, well, this movie's not going to work. Like, nobody's looking for a fun, loving Jewish comedy because the Jews have become so sensitive because of what happened. And non-Jews are so sensitive of offending Jews. And the non-Jews who don't like us don't want to engage with the content. So we're like, well, I guess we timed this wrong. But then we got accepted to Tribeca, and we thought, okay, like we're obviously going to accept and screen there. And then we screened, and opening night, the response was like a concert. Like people were like laughing out loud, like shuffling in their seats. And then it sold out the second screening also. And then it sold out the third screening. And because it sold out all those, we got an encore screening that sold out, and then it won the audience award out of all the movies there. So they gave us a fifth screening that also sold out. So it was like this crazy, like quick word of mouth. And I think there was two things. Like one is that Jews, there's this term October 8th Jews, which are people where our community, like, yes, like we were attacked, but there's been a blowback effect where people are supporting Jewish content even more so than they did before. So people really showed out for us and were posting on their social medias and telling their friends and family about it. And then the non-Jewish community, there's like a fascination with Jewish culture now, and just seeing that there's a Jewish movie, people would come to like see what it's about and just connect to the characters and feel so relieved and like seeing their own family in them. So I think from both sides there was just this embrace, and just like brought this love to the movie. That was so nice. And then from the negative side, I don't even like talking about it because at this point, the movie's been seen probably by like over 50,000 people. And I've heard of two Free Palestine comments, which is like, that's not even 0.2%. That's like nothing. So,
Yeah,
uh,
that's good.
yeah, so it's not that significant. We do get complaints from some Jewish audience members. And I think it's a nice complaint because their heart is in the right place. And it's this idea of the movie's anti-Semitic. Like, how dare you, if you have Jewish characters doing something wrong, which is covering up for their son who might have accidentally led to someone's hitting their head and dying. They think like people are going to see this and say, look, Jews are bad people. And I think their heart's in the right place with that criticism. But if you look at reality of how people engage with movies, it's actually not how it generally happens. Because I found with film, the way people engage with the movie isn't as a lawyer, but as an emotional viewer. So people don't watch a movie and say, "Oh, look, that character did something bad," or they admitted to this. People watch things as an emotional experience. And if they connect to the characters and like them and see their family dynamics in them, and then it ends and they just feel warmly towards them and they understand them, then there's just like a warmth and love towards the characters and the culture. Like that's how I felt with My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And that's, I've been to our non-Jewish screenings, and that is like the 100% overwhelming response from these people. And I don't like doing this analogy, but if you look at something like The Godfather or Sopranos, when those pieces of media came out, the Italian community went nuts. Like, this is so bad for us. People are going to watch this and think like Italians are criminals, that they're bad people, and there were protests. And then, of course, anyone who watches these end up liking Italians more, and they do way worse things than that we even don't even touch. Because I think it's the same thing. You connect to the people and the culture, and you know you're watching a piece of TV or movie. So I think the criticism is comes from a good place, and I like having the conversation, but I think the result has been positive.
So I'm just going to take one question from the audience, and if anyone else wants to send in any other questions, that's great too. Um, so we talking about the character who is the brother of the person of the son getting married. Um, he causes indirectly, potentially, the sister's boyfriend to fall um, and this, I'm not giving away any big spoiler because it happens very early on and we've talked about it, but he causes what might have been his death. And the question is sort of, what's the story with him? Is he spoiled, weird, mentally ill? Um, and and maybe you can give a little sense of where the family dynamic came from there.
Yeah, of course. And I also like Will and David's questions that we'll get to. For the younger brother, he's kind of based on this idea of a character where, like, if you've seen The White Lotus in season one, it's like this younger brother character who's just not like totally engaged with the world and is just like very set on certain ways and a little just radical in anything that he does. Like if he's working out, he's going all out. If he wants to join the IDF, he's going to go all out. And his family just, you know, kind of like supports him and everything.
Yeah.
And we wanted like the White Lotus version of the character in the Upper West Side. So I think the character is just, he comes off very strong, but it comes from a place of, being a little insecure. Like he even says at the end, like, I just wanted, and he's kept telling everyone he's an IDF because he needed something to talk about every week, just so he felt like a part of the family and he felt impressive. And it was just trying to find this, very real, exciting character that we haven't seen. And I like movies where they show me a character that doesn't feel like they're in a sitcom, but feels like a specific psyche that I don't usually engage with.
Well, in a way, sort of, you don't want to blame him too much. Um,
Yeah.
it was again, he really, and the acting is such that uh, the boyfriend who ends up dying really tortures him a little bit, just for sport. So you do sympathize with them as well. um,
For
so
the
the um,
yeah,
another question that we've got is that how do you did you choose bad Shabbos versus Shabbat? Bad Shabbat. Was
oh
that
yeah,
an
it's a great
issue?
question. We discussed that a lot. Um, where we chose bad Shabbos because the greeting for people is good Shabbos, and this is like just bad Shabbos. Like no one says like good Shabbat. So like if we told people, oh, the title's Bad Shabbat, I don't think that would make people laugh as much. But when you tell people oh, it's Bad Shabbos, that gets a certain reaction. It is limiting since it's a Yiddish word, so we even thought maybe Bad Sabbath, but then it sounds like a Black Sabbath documentary, so we had to back down from that. And we kept trying to change the title because we thought it was too niche and it wouldn't work, but we just didn't come up with one. And we had surveys, we said anyone email us. And there were some ideas like Upper West Side Story, it sounds like a musical. There was like Challah Knife, so you get like Judaism and something uh, dangerous, but I would just like this. Also, alphabetically, it's good to be early, and we got a B, so not as good as an A, but second place. And then
I, yeah.
Will asked about the punchline of the joke, which is a great question. Where in the beginning of the film, we open with a character telling a joke, and before he can tell the punchline, a body falls. And then all the way at the end of the movie, in the post credits, we have those characters show up again, and his friend says, "By the way, you never finished that joke." And he says, "Ah, it's not such a good joke." So we actually filmed two versions of that ending for the end credits. One was he says, "Ah, it's not such a good joke," and the other is he tells the full joke. And I thought we would use the version where he tells the full joke because it's one of my favorite Jewish jokes ever. But when we played it and we tested it, people just aren't looking to pay attention once the credits start and like try to lock into a joke. So it just didn't have the right effect. But when he says, it's not such a good joke, that got a funny reaction from people. And I kind of like the idea of, in Judaism, there's Torah Shebiktav, Torah Shebal Peh, like the written Torah and the one that has to be told. So if you want to hear the joke, you have to meet me or a member of the movie or a grandfather who knows all the Jewish jokes.
It's interesting that that happened, and I'm, just riffing on Guns and Moses for one moment because the same thing actually happened.
Oh, really?
The the ending in the very very ending, everything was resolved, and the who done it. You know what happened, but the very ending is not the same as the one in the script. They filmed the script ending and they used a different one. So it's
Wow.
more common than I thought. That was sort of unusual. It wasn't my decision at all, but I guess you just go with what the flow is, particularly for after everything is resolved. So the family does get some punishment at the end, at least the couple does. So there's that redeeming, that sort of feature. They don't get across, and I hate this term, but I'm going to use it scot free. Um, they definitely have to pay a price. Uh,
Yeah,
and that I think to a certain degree, we were talking about before, answers, um, that it's not totally that everything ends up 100% okay. Um,
right.
did you think about that too? I thought it was very funny, by the way, and I don't want to say what it is to take it away from people who are going to hopefully flock to the theaters after seeing this and see, or flock at least And let me ask you to put in a shameless plug for the next place that people can see Bad Shabbos, because hopefully they'll do that soon.
Oh yes, it could be pre-order now on Amazon and iTunes, or maybe just iTunes for now, and then maybe an Apple TV and maybe Amazon later, because it comes out in mid-September on there. And pre-orders actually help a lot because it helps it get to the top 10 chart. So if you do want to see it, a pre-order would be nice. But the idea for the ending, I'm gonna spoil it, but that's okay. Uh, that in the end, what happens is there was one part of the movie we couldn't solve in the script phase, and it was why, after this crazy night of the family covering this up, why would the Christian in-laws ever go along with this and let their daughter get married? And we couldn't figure it out. And it was just this like huge flaw in the script. And then Zach, the co-writer, came up with the idea because his sister just got married and he heard his mom and his her mom and his mom on the phone arguing about who gets the kids for Passover. And then Zach thought, oh, that's it. So he wrote the line, "We get Thanksgiving." And I just started laughing. I was like, that's perfect because in-laws are always arguing about this. And if they could get leverage and get their kids for every holiday because they have this blackmail, that is like the perfect, like kind of like satiric ending to this movie. And it also gave that character of the Christian mom a nice arc where earlier in the film when she's sitting at the table, she tells the Jewish mom, I just don't think it's good for kids to feel pressured about showing up, and just pressure is not good for family. But when she talks about her family, she has like a daughter who's over in Milan studying fashion, and her son is somewhere else, who I think we ended up cutting that. But then she
Oh
sees,
no, there were two. You
but
didn't
then
cut
she sees that a little pressure does help keep the family together. And I think she learns that from the Jewish mom. And at the end, she, like her husband says, now that's chutzpah, where she got the chutzpah to use a tiny bit of leverage and pressure to keep her family together. And I think that's the truth of most things. Like to say pressure's bad or pressure's good, most things are a balance. And, she's using the right amount to make sure her daughter stays in her life.
Yeah, it was very good. It was a great scene, and it really, after you think the laughs are done, there's one more which is really really great. Um, so people are. I mean, we've got a question, and I was going to ask something along these lines. Um, Hollywood was built by the Jews, um, and it wasn't a conspiracy theory. A lot of the original players in Hollywood were Jews. But then, of course, the Hollywood Museum was built, and um, there was no mention. You wouldn't think there was a Jew in town. And now you're a self-exposed Jewish filmmaker.
Yeah.
How's that working out?
So far good because um I think we're at a time when people want stories told from a specific POV. And if you just make something too general, it doesn't really connect with people. And then I even just got pitched like a Christmas murder mystery movie. And I was like, guys, like, I'm very Jewish. And I was like, yeah, but you know the Old Testament, this is just the sequel. Um, so I think, I'm not being limited. And then in the stories, I do want to tell like if I can get this Hanukkah movie moving with my friends, I think it would be a nice thing because as Jews believe in this might be like a little too like uppity, but like Jews believe in tikkun olam or making the world a slightly better place. And people can argue about what the purpose of art is. Is it self-expression? Is it um, something else. But to me, the idea that always stuck with me is that people have a lens through which they see the world. And if you can make that lens a little brighter, like make them like appreciate family more, appreciate their life a little more. Like that's why people watch It's a Wonderful Life every year for the holidays, because that movie does fix your lens through which you see the world, where instead of focusing on success being money, you value it as like friends and family. And I think as being a Jewish American filmmaker, keeping that in mind and trying to keep in mind that Jewish spirit of trying to make people's lenses a little brighter. And I think that helps inform the world around them, which might be a little too like I don't think we're like saving the world in any way, but I think keeping that in mind instead of just making, schlock that might depress someone, is like is a nice idea. And someone, you don't have to make yourself anonymous, but you're right. We have a mistake in the movie where the mom who lights the candles, I think she goes this way, where she welcomes Shabbat like this, but I think you're supposed to do it like down. And I've just been telling people that's her min hug, where,
Yeah,
she's a German Jew, she's a Yeki. They always have different things going on.
yeah, you can tell her she's from Frankfurt. That always sells it because their Minhagim are different than everybody.
Yeah, yeah, it's just a
Um,
min hug. Also, they normally don't sing the blessing for Friday night. It's usually just said,
yeah,
but emotionally, that beat had to be seeing the beauty of Judaism and connecting to it. And when they just said it, it felt a little flat. So I asked the rabbi, I said, if they were to sing it, what tune would they use? He says it's very rare, but if people sing it, they use one of these two. And then we chose the one that it's the Hanukkah tune, but there is a tradition of some people using that to sing Friday night. And you could just say it's their custom, their minhag.
yeah. So, um, the Hebrew and all of that, was that hard for anybody? Was it, there is a real authenticity to the blessings and to everything. And was that hard? Sometimes you can tell people are doing transliteration, but not so
Yeah,
much.
right. Yeah, we were on it. Like if someone pronounced Devar Torah, we'd say no, it's Devar Torah, and we'd make sure that it was right because it's a pet peeve when people get it wrong in movies, and it would take me out. And like the actors were just committed to it. Like some, like Milana, who's plays the sister so brilliantly, who you might recognize from the AT&T commercials.
Yeah,
I think she's one of the best actresses in the world, like in terms of just how any word out of her just is so authentic and effortlessly funny. She's Jewish in real life, so she knew the blessings and but then Kira and the girl who's converting just learned them. So my sister made a recording that I sent to them, and they learned off my sister's recording. And then for Shalom Aleichem, I found a recording on YouTube that they would just listen to. So I'd walk into the room and see Kira listening to Shalom Aleichem, like with an ear pod, just like trying to get the words right. And I was like, this is the most surreal thing I've ever seen. And then David Paymer for the Kiddush on Friday night, my rabbi, Rabbi Morgenstern, who gets a shout out in the movie from Young Israel of Scarsdale,
yeah,
he recorded a Kiddush that I shared with David Paymer, which turned out to be a lot to learn. So we just did Yom HaShishi and then kind of cut away.
yeah.
Uh, but then at the end, he says like Baruch Atah Hashem Kadesh HaShabbat. So they got it right, thankfully, but it took time.
That was very impressive.
Yeah,
Very
the
impressive.
actors themselves, like they don't view it as annoying. Like they want things to be correct. So like they were coming up to me like, am I saying this right? How do I say this word? And I was like the Jewish consultant on set.
Yeah. By the way, I meant to say this earlier, but if you do a Christmas movie, you're in with like great people like Irving Berlin, and most of the big Christmas movies were done by Jews. So
Oh yeah, yeah. And by the Christmas songs too, like Berlin wrote White Christmas.
White Christmas,
I heard Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was actually I saw this
yes,
amazing
Rudolph the Red.
documentary short
Yep,
about.
that's also a Jewish lyricist. So it's no problem. You have my permission. You
This
know.
might be a question for another time, but I am wondering your thoughts on the ethics of me uh, spending 8 months on making a Christmas movie. Like on the one hand, it's like putting like, just making a pro-faith film and
Yeah,
supporting the different faiths because Judaism isn't about converting. We can talk about that another time.
yeah.
But someone asked, is David Paymer, who plays Richard, as funny in person as his character? Yes. He is a very funny and insanely kind person. And he actually lives in LA, so he flew in from New York to do this movie. And one week we even had him on a Monday, and then he had to film this TV show called Dave in LA. So he left Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and came back to film with us on Friday. And it was a lot for him, but he just did it with like a smile on his face and was so kind about it.
So how many days were you filming?
The audience could probably answer this, but it's a very important number in Judaism. 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you
Where
on budget for days, or were you over or under?
we were on, but it was really hard to hit that number where we had two cameras and we really had to plan where all the cameras would be to make sure we capture. everything because it's so many characters and so many angles every day. But our DP, Matt Clegg, was really great about planning to make sure we hit that. And we didn't have to change locations that much because we were just in that one 10th floor apartment the entire shoot, which is challenging because everyone's tight in this small space. So, if we want to film down, even if two characters were talking in a hallway like this, we would film this character talking and move everyone behind the camera. So, like the cast, the crew. And then once we wanted to look at this character, we had to move everything to the other side of the apartment to like look at them. So it took so long just in between stuff.
Wow. Um, the um, so I do want to say this, since you asked the question. We do need more Jewish movies. I think that even though we're not saving the world, and you're not, none of us who are involved in Jewish movie making, me much less than you. I have sort of a bit walk on part of being involved, and I didn't even walk on, but I think there's an a real need right now to present Jews as not the other,
Mm,
as just like everybody else. There's a lot of people that are working very hard to denormalize Jews, and so to the extent that there's good, real entertainment, which we're not, humming Hatikva to get people to come to do, but are saying here, this has got merit. That's why the screening that I saw, I went down to, I saw it on the Lower East Side, Bad Shabbos, and I was really happy that there were a mix. I actually looked in the
that's
audience.
great.
It was a good half Jewish, but there were plenty of non-Jews, and I think that's just an important and really good thing. So if you have the choice of doing it, and we could use more Hanukkah movies. Um, we really could. There's the
Yeah.
Hallmark movies, which make your teeth hurt.
Yeah, yeah, it's not the
They,
same.
they like really, they're so sweet. They make it's just like too. It just doesn't really work. Some of them are entertaining, but they don't work. Um, and they've run out of small town Jews in small towns who are cowboys who go to the big city. I mean, I don't know how you're going to do that again.
Yeah.
It really needs some new blood. And but aside from Adam Sandler, there's not really much. And
Yeah,
uh,
you're right.
yeah, so
And
please do that for us. We'll be happy to. A lot of us will be happy um, to to come.
all right,
So
I'll get to it.
so I think we're getting close to the end. So first of all, do you have any last words you'd like to say? And leave the group with a thought.
Um, I think maybe two quick things. One is kind of what you said that about like having portrayals of Judaism that's not the other that because I've really been in the trenches on this and the way to help anti-Semitism often isn't by like having a by lecturing someone or arguing someone saying, oh no, like look, blood libel's not true because if you look at this detail, because once you're there, like guards are up and it's over. But, it's like seeing a movie where people relate to the characters and just connect to them. It's if you see someone in line and they know you're Jewish and you're kind to them, like that could fully change their mind. So it is about finding these small moments of just being a person with other people and just giving them exposure in a positive way. At least that's what I found just from I've traveled to so many cities at this point. And then from the movie itself, I just rewatched it recently, and I know there are a lot of lessons in it, but especially with the high holidays coming up, and we're probably going to be with our families. It's this idea that getting along with your family can sometimes be a battle, but that it's a battle worth fighting, and it's a privilege. And that's what I felt on the last viewing of this movie. And, I hope that others feel that, and whether you go to badshabbos.com and see it in theaters or pre-order it on iTunes. Just feel free to reach out if you have any other questions.
So first of all, thank you for making the movie, um, and after it's on video on demand, buy it and you'll own it forever and you can re-show it. Or and afterward, I'm sure it'll be streaming. I don't know where you're going to end up doing deals, but watch it. And the thing about Jewish movies is sometimes they really have a long life in streaming. I mean, Shiva Baby was an exceptionally well received movie in streaming. So was When Do We Eat, and a whole bunch of other indie Jewish movies. A Serious Man, I'm sure did. I mean, it was on. I couldn't even get it off of HBO.
Yeah.
So please watch it. It's great. And I'm
I'll
going to
check
give
it out.
one shameless plug again. I'm wearing the hat, so I can't resist. Guns N' Moses. It's
Yeah.
coming out September 6th. It's a limited national Fathom release. Please see it. It helps too. As Daniel said, order your tickets early because all of the theaters have their own algorithms about how much time they give movies and what theaters they put them in within the multiplexes. So it's about a rabbi who it's a Chabad sort of rabbi. You can even read about it on Chabad.org. They followed it, who becomes a very unlikely hero. And again, it's about engaging with the Jews, engaging with the rest of the world, and an
Yeah.
audacious view toward um, really a take on anti-Semitism, and really audacious, um, empathy really saves the day. Um, and now I just
And
want to talk. I want to wrap up and say thank you, Daniel. We
yeah,
really appreciate you joining us. And
thank you
to our
guys.
viewers, I want to let you know that our next Shabbat, our next scholars, I'm already in Shabbos mode, our next Scholars Circle feature will be with Dr. Andrew Pessin, who is a regular on Scholars Circle, and his topic will be a live briefing on campus anti-Semitism. It's on September 10th at 7 p.m. So if you're not in the theater that night um, watching Guns N' Moses, tune in to Scholars Circle. And thank you. And we hope to see you all soon. Thank you again, Daniel. And thank you to the Chaim Mitzvah team, to Simon, to Audrey, to Nina, and to really make all of this happen. Thank you guys. We stand on your shoulders.